When people hear the phrase sales culture, they might think of scripts, quotas, or pressure. But to me, the strongest sales cultures are built on something very different. In this episode of Straight Talk, we're going to explore what it really means to build a sales culture that feels authentic, sustainable, and aligned with your company's values, and how business owners can move beyond transactional selling to create teams that confidently represent who they are and what they deliver. And to do this, I'm pleased to welcome back regular guest Troy Harrison. Welcome to 2026.
Jeff, Happy New Year. It's good to see you and it's good to be on here again.
Absolutely. And we're starting off 2026 with Troy on a really cool topic, sales culture. I want to know what that really means, sales culture. Can you help out?
Absolutely. I thought this would be a good way for us to start off because I think that I'm seeing a lot more and I'm doing a lot more work on culture these days, company culture and sales culture. And I don't think people know what culture really means, either company or sales. And I'm going to limit this to sales culture. A sales culture is a general acceptance of the role that sales plays within a company and a general agreement and acceptance by the salespeople of what their roles are. And I know that's a big statement. I'm going to try and home in on it a little bit, but my point is this: when you have a sales culture within a company, you don't have to have debates with other departments about whether or not the sales department is important. Here's the thing. In all too many companies, the culture looks like this. You got the main company right here, right in the middle. Okay, this is operations, finance, service delivery, all of these things, right? And then you got sales kind of floating off here in the ozone, and it's not really integrated into the company. A sales culture from a perspective outside the sales department means that sales is intrinsic to the company's mission. It's about what we do, it's about how we do it, and sales has a seat and a voice at the table in overall company direction. And some of you watching this might think, well, that sounds crazy. Of course it does. Believe me, I've worked with and in companies where sales was not considered intrinsic to the company culture until management got pissed off that they weren't getting enough revenue. All of a sudden, sales got pretty damned intrinsic. So that's looking from outside the sales department, is that understanding that sales plays a role in what the company culture is. Now, inside the sales department, there's a different sales culture. Internally, a sales culture is, and I don't know if this is a word, the routinization, if you will, the making, and if it's not a word, I'm claiming it, the routinization of what sales does day in and day out. As an example, in a positive company culture, we're not debating with salespeople over whether or not they enter in their stuff into CRM. It's just what you do. When exiting a sales call, grabbing your phone, entering in what happened on that sales call, that's just a routine. That's what I mean by routinization. And it becomes just a force of habit. The role that sales plays within the company and the way that sales interacts with other departments is a part of that sales culture, which means sales carries the ball. It carries its own weight, and then salespeople are expected to be good company citizens in dealing with other departments. Salespeople aren't bullies. They earn their spot as part of the team and a seat at the table. But think about this from the sales manager's perspective. I'm going to talk to the sales managers or the presidents, whoever's managing the sales department right now. Let's talk about how you build the right internal sales culture. The right internal sales culture means that you are willing to say to your salespeople, here is what your job consists of. And it's more than just go sell. Okay, your job consists of hitting these KPIs. We look for, this many proposals per month. We look for this many deals per month. We expect you to have this many initial appointments to lead to those proposals. All these things. And you have all that in place, and They just become force of habit for everybody. We're not debating with our salespeople, is it appropriate for you to do 4 meetings per week? It's just what you do. We might debate a little bit over final contract terms, price, that kind of thing, but we're not having a debate about the basic responsibilities of a salesperson. But having that kind of a salesperson also means that you've got to be willing to define down the details and define down the roadmap to success for salespeople. It can't just be go sell and bring me revenue. Because if it does, if that's all you're doing, you don't have a sales culture. I'll give you another example of a sales culture. I talk to sales managers all the time about coaching salespeople. As a matter of fact, I just did a program in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago for a group of sales managers, and one of the things we talked about was coaching sales behaviors. And I said something that really drew a lot more questioning than I thought it would. I said to coach sales behaviors, you have to be out in the field with your salespeople, observing them on sales calls, watching what they actually do, not jumping in and trying to sell the business, and then coming back, forming some data points about, okay, what can we improve, and then coaching to those. And out of a group of 10 sales managers, I had 3 of them that said, Troy, how am I supposed to say to my salespeople, hey, I'm going to go out with you and coach you? What do you mean? This is almost foreign to me, and it shouldn't have been. I guess it's not. And they said, well, this isn't something we do. I said, okay, that's what we mean by sales culture. Sales culture means that your salespeople should expect that at any given time you might want to go with them on a sales call. That is part of making that culture, and you just make it a routine. And usually, when you set a sales culture or you make a change in a sales culture, you begin by announcing it to everybody. Just say, hey, guys, I realize I haven't been going out on sales calls. I'm going to start now. And then you just start doing it, and you can get to the point. One of my favorite sales teams that I ever coached was in the laundry industry, and this was about, God, I don't want to say how many years ago it was, 25. But we got to the point as a sales culture and as a team where I would go up into the sales war room where guys were getting ready to go out on sales calls at 8 o'clock in the morning. I just walk up to one of my salespeople at random and say, "Hey, I'm bored. Get me out of the office. I want to go with you today." And it just happened. It wasn't something that became a topic of debate. So, as a manager, when you're building a sales culture, think heavily about what are the behaviors that you want to just expect from your salespeople. In other words, you don't have to push them. You don't want to have to uh, repeatedly announce those behaviors. It's just these are the things I just want to expect from you. Then sit down, designate that out, let your team know what they are, train it, and then manage it in a philosophy that I've heard years ago and that I love. Management is a gentle pressure applied relentlessly. Move towards that culture every day. And it can be done in a number of ways. For instance, let's talk about CRM for a moment. My philosophy as a manager when I was managing a CRM system is if it isn't in CRM, it didn't happen. And I would have salespeople come to me and say, "Hey, Troy, got an issue with this proposal that I put out." And the first thing I do, I pull it up on my screen. It's not in, Jeff, it's not in CRM. Well, I know, but okay, no. Here's the deal. I will be happy to advise you when it's in CRM. Go back to your desk. When you can walk back in here and it's in CRM, let's talk about it and I'll help you. You don't have to do that too many times before it just becomes a routine. And that's what I mean by routinization. It just becomes a rote part of what this job consists of. That doesn't mean you're scripting your salespeople. Part of a sales culture is also allowing people room to channel sales techniques through their best personalities, be the best version of themselves. It's not about scripting. It's not about trying to create sales robots, but it is about trying to create certain behaviors that we consider to be desirable. as a manager too, you've also got to manage the external behavior of your team within the company. Because as we know, when we create a sales culture that says that sales is important and vital, which it is, some salespeople can grab that baton and run way too far with it, and start bullying other people in the building. You, as a manager, have to be willing to pull back, not push back, but pull back on that kind of behavior and say, look, we still have to have good relationships with everybody else in the building. I had a coaching client here in Kansas City. I actually had to fire him last year because they were willing to accept salespeople walking into other departments and saying, "Look, I feed everybody in this company." Well, okay, there's some truth to that from a strict revenue production perspective, but you don't open your big flap and say that. And the manager of that department not only was unwilling to pull back on that behavior, he encouraged it. And that's when I kind of finally said to the owner, look, we are not on the same page with how we feel like business ought to be done. No harm, no foul, we're buddies, but wish you all the best. So when you're thinking about your sales culture, I would advise people to sit down and define, okay, how do I want my people to behave internally and externally? What key performance indicators or metrics are available? Do I want them to hit on a day in and day out basis? And then you've also got to think about what personality types do I need to have in order to achieve that? And if you do those things, I think you can be pretty successful with sales culture. And the final thing that underpins sales culture is remembering this. How you treat your salespeople is going to be mirrored and matched in how they treat their customers. How you allow your salespeople to treat customer service is going to be mirrored and matched in the way that customer service treats your customers. So ultimately, it's all going to flow down to your customers. And that is probably one of the biggest yardsticks for sales culture that I can think of. So that's just kind of a 5,000 foot sketch on a sales culture, Jeff.
5,000 foot?
Maybe 10.
I'd say 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I was
know,
never good with heights.
your example of the salesperson coming in to get some coaching, some advice on a proposal, that really happened?
Oh, yeah. It
Troy,
actually happens fairly frequently.
why? Why does that happen when salespeople should know the basics?
A lot of times it's not about knowing the basics.
Okay.
And sometimes it's even about they have a hypothesis and they want to test it. Here's the other thing, and you just brought up a hell of a good point. Part of a sales culture is this. Let your salespeople know it's not an expression of weakness for them to ask for help. You shouldn't be, when your salesperson comes to you with a question, unless it's just something that is so routine that, yeah, they should have already learned it by now.
Like, should I put
But
that in the CRM?
yeah, exactly. Well, I'll give you another example of a client that I had years ago. They had a sales manager who had been there for a year and a half, and in a year and a half, they had never really understood the dynamics of how the contract in their industry worked. And this was their in that industry, their contracts form the basis of everything sales does. That's a problem. But let your salespeople know if they need advice on and feedback on how to make a sale happen, how to build a customer relationship, let them know your office is a safe space for doing that. And many times over the years, and I see it with my clients too, salespeople will come in to ask a question. They got an idea of how they want to approach this, but they want that second sounding board to bounce it off of. Okay, boss, here's what I'm thinking.
That makes
And
sense.
sometimes you look at it and you go, yep, wouldn't add anything to that. Or sometimes you go, okay, let's tweak that a little bit. And sometimes you go, oh, good God, don't do that. But make it, make it so that, because any question internally hurts you a lot less than a mistake externally.
For sure.
So let your salespeople know that yes, it's okay for them to come to you for that kind of help.
Yeah, it's a team.
Hmm.
I guess the only other question I have, I don't know if this is a wrap or not, and you can conclude with some final thoughts, but thinking about, I've done programs on this about company culture or customer service, and
Yeah.
every company, every business has that. Now, it could be bad. It's funny when I joke with friends, like they'll say, that restaurant doesn't have customer service. I'm like, oh, they do. It's just not the kind you want.
Yeah.
Is it the same with sales culture? I mean, there is a sales culture no matter
Oh
what.
yeah.
It's just
Oh yeah.
good, bad, and different.
Cultures cultures always happen. Like you said,
Mhm.
every company has a culture. Every company has a customer service ethic. Every company has a sales culture. The only question is it intentional? Is it accidental? Is it positive or is it negative? Now, I'll tell you this. If your company culture, your sales culture, or your customer service culture is not intentional, it's probably not good. Great cultures don't happen by accident. And I'm going to say this too, and this is going to be a controversial statement. It's going to piss at least somebody off who watches this video. Culture is top down, it's not bottom up. Okay. I see a lot of companies say, well, I want to drive my culture from the bottom up. And that's not the way it works. Leadership is paid and there for a reason. Leadership is there to set the culture, to assist the culture, to foster the culture, sometimes to enforce the culture, and quite frankly, to change out personnel if those personnel are not willing to support the culture. That's what leadership does. That's why they get paid the big bucks. And you can't abdicate that responsibility. I'm I'm a little bit loath to use the phrase inmates running the asylum, but usually that's what it works. When you go someplace like your restaurant, when you go some to a restaurant and you say they have no customer service, what that means is that the management and leadership is not driving a positive customer service ethic. And when you work with a company that has a toxic culture, most of the time the top leadership in that company has abdicated the building of that company culture to subordinates. And a lot of times those subordinates build their own culture around whatever serves their immediate needs, which is not necessarily what serves the needs of the overall company or the customers. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
whoever's watching this, your company has a culture. The only question is, what is that culture and is it positive or negative?
And I agree with the leadership down, not from the bottom, the ground floor up, because you have to set the example. This might be part of this conversation, but whenever we go to a grocery store, a restaurant, any business, and there's an issue, maybe the trash is overflowing, maybe at the grocery store, the shopping carts are all over the parking lot.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, to me, to Jeff, I blame the manager.
Yeah. And that goes back to that word that I just invented, routinization. It is not routine for people to check the trash barrels. It is not routine to go police the shopping carts. Those are exceptional events, and usually what happens is because it is not routine, the manager ends up having to say, "Hey Joe, go check the shopping carts," when he remembers to do it. But if something is routine as part of your culture, if it is routine, for instance, in a grocery store that every hour somebody's going to go take a quick walk in the parking lot and look for stray shopping carts, then it happens. If it's not routine, then it's dependent upon when their boss says, "Hey, go check the shopping carts." If it is routine to take a quick walk around every 30 minutes or an hour or so and see if any of the trash barrels are overflowing, then it happens.
Mhm.
And here's the crazy thing. People think that building a company culture is hard work as a manager. It's a hell of a lot less hard than trying to because if you don't build a culture and routinize your behaviors, you end up having to police those behaviors every hour of every day.
You're always playing catch up, always.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And and look, I know I'd be a hell of a lot more popular on LinkedIn if I talked about bottom-up cultures rather than top-down cultures. But I talk about this because that's what it works.
I think that's got some value, Troy. It works. Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
like things that work.
Yeah, I do too.
Years ago, I watched a Tom Peters speech, the big quality guy, and he was talking about Maytag, and he said, I see all these companies talking about market segmentation and focus groups and all that. He said, here's how Maytag segmented their market. They focused on that segment of the market that likes things that work. And they bit at the time, don't know if it's true anymore, but at the time, they built the best appliances out there, and the lonely Maytag repairman wasn't just an advertising slogan, it was a reality. So, yeah, I like things that work, and building a good sales culture is one of those things that works.
Unlike that lonely Maytag guy who never got a job.
Exact.
He sat there
Hey,
waiting for the phone to ring.
you do remember who that was, don't
Oh,
you?
of course I do. How old do you think I am? Don't
Uh,
answer.
yeah, neither one of us wants to answer that question.
Yeah, I remember those commercials. The Maytag man sitting there waiting for the phone to ring.
But you remember who the actor was?
I can see his face. I can't think of his
Gordon
name.
Jump. Mr. Carlson on WKRP.
That's right.
Yep.
Good show. Good show.
Yep.
Good culture there, maybe. I don't know.
I think that was a bottom-up culture.
All right, Troy. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Always fun, Jeff. Thanks.